The Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast is brought to you by the following sponsors: EliteForm.com, IgnitionAPG.com, PlayUSA at PLAEUSA.com, and Sorinex Exercise Equipment at Sorinex.com. And now, the Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast. Welcome to Iron Game Chalk Talk with your host, Ron McKeefery.
Every time our athletes walk into this weight room, they're going to be pushed to the max.
Let's go! Everything you got!
On this podcast, hear Coach McKeefery straight talk about training, featuring the top strength and conditioning professionals from around the world. And now, here's your host, Ron McKeefery.
Hey guys, welcome back to Iron Game Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and this is episode number 156. Super excited to have Nick Garcia with us today. Nick is the head strength coach at Notre Dame High School out in California, and if you follow high school football, you know that they are a powerhouse program. And so I wanted to have Nick on. Actually, Bert Soren made a recommendation to have him on. Nick has spent time with Dr. Bondarchuk, has really studied the Bondarchuk system. It's something that I wasn't as familiar with, not coming from a track background. And so we wanted to have him on the show. We wanted to talk about that. We dig into a lot of great things and stuff that I didn't know. Like I said, I was unfamiliar with the system. I'd read the book and things along those lines, but really didn't know the nuances. And so you're going to get a ton out of this episode. Before we do, I want to recognize our sponsor. This weekend, hopefully you're listening to this episode as you're driving down to Summer Strong 9 down South Carolina. Sorinex puts on this event each year. Started as a birthday party for Mr. Soren, but it's evolved into just a unbelievable strength and conditioning event. There's a combine, there's clinic, there's an exhibition, there's all these things that go into this weekend. And some of the most incredible people around. I mean, you got Derek Woodsky, who's been on the show. You got Christmas Abbott coming to speak, and you got Mike Schrock. You got Brandon Lilly. You got on and on and on. Aaron Osmus. I mean, guys that have done it at a high level, coaches that have done it at a high level, talking shop. Jeff Nichols is going to be there, who I just think the world of. Has been on the show. I mean, I've said this last year. There's clinics and there's events and things like this. This is an experience, and if you're anywhere within reach of Summer Strong, I think it is a must-attend event. So go to Sorinex.com, sign up for that. Let me know that you're coming. I speak on Sunday, closing it out. Can't wait for that. So honestly, I'm a little nervous. I speak so much, but speaking in front of this group, I'm a little nervous to do so. So excited for you to be there, and I, like I said, you're going to walk away a changed strength coach for the better, for sure. So check that out, Sorinex.com, and we'll see you there. All right, let's get to this episode with Nick. All right, guys, got to make a quick apology here. Just shot the video, the intro, and was putting in the videos to edit out the episode, and just realized that for whatever reason, my voice sounds like this.
Hey guys, welcome back to Iron Game Chalk Talk. Excited to have Nick Garcia with us. Nick is a strength.
And so, in doing the editing, Nick's voice came out great. My voice sounds like a chipmunk. I'm not exactly sure why that is, and hoping that I can get it figured out down the line here. But want to get this episode up. I don't want to waste Nick's time. He has a ton of great content in this episode, and so I'm going to do my best to recreate the questions so that it leads right into his responses. Shouldn't notice any difference, but I just want to apologize to Nick and you guys on the front end with the technical difficulties that we have. But Nick, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. Really honored to have you on, and Bert speaks very highly of you, and just appreciate you taking the time.
Oh man, it's my honor to be here. I'm excited to be involved with this, and I can't wait to get going here. Fired up.
Nick, I want to dive right into your journey here. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how you ended up getting your role there at Notre Dame High School?
Well, when I was in high school, I always had been a big Nebraska football fan, and one time an ad came on TV while watching one of their game, Make the Play, and it was a Make the Play book and video by Boyd Epley. And I still have it to this day. A Nebraska coach came in recruiting the other day, and I showed him. He took a bunch of pictures of it because it's the original Make the Play 1997 guide from Boyd Epley. And he's like, "Man, Boyd Epley's gonna eat this stuff up. You got any more books, boys?" I said, "Yeah, I got them all." And I even have the VHS tape. And so that's what got me into strength and conditioning. And that was in high school in 1996. And ever since then, I've been fascinated by it and been interested in it. And what really turned me on to was my college coach. He was very methodical in how he did things, and we had lots of success in the throws and in the shot put and discus hammer throw. So he really taught me how to set things up. But that Make the Play commercial and that guide really got me going with strength and conditioning back in the day.
Nick, have you always been at Notre Dame High School, or have you been some other places? And then who have been some of the early influences in your career?
Actually, I've been here at Notre Dame for 14 years right out of college. I've had opportunities other places, but this has been a great place for me. And anything I've ever wanted, they've given me here. So if I need something, they give it to me. But as far as my coaching journey is where I've learned a lot from. Every year I go on a trip someplace, and wherever I go to the main Division I college there, and I try to learn from that person. One guy I met in 2003 was Vern Gambetta, and he's been a huge influence in my coaching career. And from then on, I just kind of based my programs and stuff from stuff I've learned from him. And then as I went along and met people and saw things and how different teams run through different training programs, I've added to it and kind of meshed all that stuff I've learned together to get my one program. Influence-wise, lately, Shannon Turley at Stanford. I don't know him well, but he's always been very nice to me to go visit. I'm originally from the Bay Area, and whenever I go up there, I go visit, and I really enjoy watching them train and seeing how they train. And I ask them a bunch of questions, how they sequence things, and a lot of how my sequencing goes here at Notre Dame is from how Shannon told me how they sequence things at Stanford. So he's been a big influence in my coaching as of late.
Awesome, man. Well, when learning from some of those coaches and those experiences, what has been one of the biggest mistakes that you've made as a strength and conditioning coach?
I think not being as open-minded as I should be. I think that I was so loyal and so passionate about my coach in college that whatever he did, because we had success with it, that's what I wanted to do. And it was he had to kind of use the Tudor Bopa method. And so I was very, very kind of closed-minded to the fact that this is how we're going to do it and this is the way we're going to do it. And as I got older and got more experience and got involved with other coaches, my mind started to open more, and I began to have a more open mind about things. And you see lots of guys on the internet and whatnot, and you kind of look at them and they say, well, this guy's just trying to sell his product, or this guy's just doing this or whatnot. And that's another thing too, is like be more open-minded about the person that you're learning from, or people to learn from. You can always learn something from somebody, whether they're just trying to sell their product or really passionate about what they're actually doing. So I think that's one thing, is being more open-minded about things. And the reason why I got onto the Dr. Bondarchuk type system is because I became more open-minded. I had no interest in it when I had. Make a long story short, Dylan Armstrong, who's a Canadian record holder in the shot, and his coach came out here for a 3-week training camp just when Dr. B came to Canada. And during that time, I was fairly young. I was really young, actually. And when they were here, I should have paid a lot better attention. But like I said, I was caught in my ways. I was like, this is the way we're going to do it. This is how we're going to do it. I had no interest in learning that system. And, man, I missed a huge opportunity. I could have learned that system long time ago, and I messed up. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that I've made.
Dick, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show was to talk about the Bondarchuk system and your experiences with it. Kind of how did you get into the Bondarchuk system, learn it, and then apply it both as an athlete and as a coach?
All right. Well, how it started is I'm not a very tall individual. I'm only 5'7", and I'm a 60-foot shot putter, or was a 60-foot shot putter. And I got called out one time, and it bothered me. And I had taken 2 years off throwing. I'd throw it here and there. And so man, I think I'm going to get back into this a little bit. I'm still young enough, and heck, I get called out here, so I'm gonna prove this person wrong. So I called up Martin Bignisser, and him and I do a podcast on hammermedia.com, HMMRmedia, and he was very influential. He knows Dr. B very well. And Derek Evely, who is, I mentioned, is Dylan Armstrong's former coach, he's the one who brought Dr. B from overseas over to Canada. I called them up. I said, hey, look, I want to get back into throwing, and I want to learn this new system. I got nothing to lose. I just want to, see if I could go to the college meets now and still throw 17 meters, and which was like I can't believe that I just did this after 3 years off, right? And that whole season, at 34 years old, I had a lifetime best, and I threw 18 meters in almost every meet that season. And I was like, wow, we're really onto something here. And the crazy part is I never lifted heavy. I never lifted over 70% of my max, and everything was for speed. So that really said, wow, I'm kind of onto something here. And that's when I started applying it to my high school kids that were just track and field athletes, and it kind of exploded from there. Now, what the system is, it's very simple. It's not as complicated as people think it is. People say, yeah, I used part of that system. Well, you can't use part of the system. You either use the whole system or you don't use any of the system. You can use exercises from it. Like they talk about specific strength. Well, yeah, specific strengths in everybody's program, and it's just not just Dr. B's program. So the way you apply the system is the goal is to find how long it takes for an athlete to adapt. And everybody's different. You're different than I am. I'm different than a high school kid and whatnot. So in order to make that happen, the basics is you pick 7 exercises, right? And there's four different exercise labels. There's competitive exercise, which is throwing the shot, whether that's heavy implements, light implements, or your normal implement. There's a specific development exercise, which is something that mimics the shot put throw, but isn't the actual shot put. So doing heavy throws with a sandbag, like a 50-pound sandbag or a 50-pound med ball, something like that. Something that mimics the action. Even the Niter press is considered a specific development exercise to the shot put because it kind of comes out at the same angle as a shot does. Then you have your specific preparatory exercises, which are exercises that use the same muscle that the shots do, that the shot put or the discus does, whatnot, but you're not mimicking the movement of the shot put. And finally, you have your general preparatory exercises, and those are very basic. There's really no ifs, ands, or buts. You have a twisting exercise, you have a back exercise, you have a abdominal exercise, and we add a frontal plane exercise in just so we hit all 3 planes. We train in all 3 planes of movement. And so what you do, you take those together. So, for example, I'm going to take let's plan a cycle together. So I'm going to throw a 16-pound shot, a 14-pound shot, and a 6K shot. Those are my competitive exercises. Then I'm going to take my specific development exercise, and let's do a Niter press. Okay. And then I'm going to take my specific preparatory exercises. And the way I sequence it is I go Olympic lift and lower body lift. And the Olympic lift, let's say we'll do snatch, and the lower body lift, let's say step-ups. And then I'll pick my 4 exercises, let's say a long twist and with the plate twist, let's call it. And then let's say a good morning, a windmill for a frontal plane, and a V-up for abdominal. So we do that every single day, 2 days on, 1 day off, at the same weight, at the same intensity, at the same volume and everything. And what you do is every day you mark your best throws. So some days, you have really good days. Some days you have bad days. But that's how you tell when you're adapting and when you're not adapting. And so each athlete creates a specific pattern based off that. So people say, well, you can't lift heavy one day and light another day. No, you can't do it because it messes the reaction up. You can't take supplements one cycle and not take creatine another cycle or other supplements another cycle because it's going to mess your reaction up. So everything has to be the same like Groundhog Day. And what you do is you develop patterns for your athletes or for yourself if you're using it yourself. And for me personally, like what I found is when I start the first developmental cycle, that's one of the cycles it's called, is I throw gangbusters from sessions 4 to 6, and then I hit peak performance at session 16 to 22. Those are my patterns. I found that I could throw as light as a 6K and as heavy as an 18-pound shot without messing up my technique. But if I throw anything heavier or anything lighter, it'll mess my technique up. And a lot of Dr. B's training is about transfer. So what transfers are the best for your throwing? Well, for me, if I throw the 6K far in training, I know I'm going to throw the 16 far. So the 6K has shown that it has the most transfer for my meets. So now when if I plan meets for myself, what I'll do is I'll plan that last developmental cycle using the 6K, and then I know I'm going to be dialed in for the 16 when I hit peak performance. Does that all make sense so far?
Nick, explain a little bit more of the cycle. Kind of how many sessions make up a cycle? What's a cycle really consist of?
A cycle is based off sessions. It's not based off days. So depends if you do double days or not. Let's say you don't do double days. You can't do double days. So usually 22 sessions, you go 2 days on, 1 day off. You're looking at a month and a few days, a month and a half. Now, people get sick and whatnot, so there's a rule of thumb where you can go as long as 10 days without training if you're sick or injured, and it won't mess your reaction up. Meaning that if I get to session 8 of my new developmental cycle, and I have to take 10 days off in a row because I'm injured or something like that, I can start back at session 9 again and still hit peak performance at 16, like where my peak performance is at. But if you get past 10 days, that's kind of the breaking point where it's not going to work anymore. So basically what you do is you shut that system, that developmental cycle down, you move into a rest cycle. And what a rest cycle is, it's also depends on the person, but that's usually 20 sessions. And its objective is to wash all of the exercises you did in the previous developmental cycle out of your body. So whatever you adapted to, you're washing that all out, and you're going to start over on the next developmental cycle. And if you go too short with the rest or cleanse cycle, rest cleanse, your next developmental cycle is not going to be on like it should be. Washing out, what you do is you get a light implement, let's say a 14-pound shot or 6K shot. You're going to take 4 throws with that 6K shot, and then you're going to do a circuit of 5 bodyweight exercises. So we'll do like a lunge, a push-up, it's all bodyweight, some heaving with the med ball, an ab exercise, and a back exercise, just to keep the muscles active during this phase, but to wash all that stuff out that you adapted to. So you're going to go you'll do 4 parts. It's done in parts. So for me, I do 80 parts in a rest cycle. And that's 4 parts a day for 20 sessions. So every time I take 4 throws and do 1 circuit, that's considered 1 part. There's one other cycle, it's called maintenance. And when you're looking through the yearly plan, you have to determine whether or not you have time to do another developmental cycle or not. Because the developmental cycle is where that's why it's called developmental. It's where the development takes place. So that's the standard. You could go developmental to rest, or you could go developmental to rest to maintenance. You can never go developmental to developmental because you get burnt out, because that's when the hard training takes place. So if I'm getting to the end of the year, I'm saying, okay, well, I have developmental. I got my developmental cycle here. Do I have enough sessions or days for that rest cycle to take place to hit another developmental cycle to hit peak performance? And you can do that if you want. Or you could go to maintenance. And the maintenance phase is basically you do the same exact thing as you do in a developmental cycle, but you change the exercises every 2 weeks. And that holds your level of performance through that time. And I have charts and patterns of myself and my athletes that when we're in the maintenance cycle, it holds that level of performance perfectly in the shot put, it's within like 50 centimeters usually.
Are you determining your intensity off of percentages? Or are you determining it off of velocity base, maybe a tendo or something along those lines, elite form? How are you determining the weight that you're using?
Are you talking like weightlifting percentages? So like if we're going to squat roughly between 60 and 70%. We're going to bench between 60 and 70%. It's always roughly between 60 and 70%. What we did one time to experiment was we used the push device and a tendo, and not only do we measure our throws out on the field, we put the tendo in the push device and measure our speeds of our lifts every day because they're the same thing every day. And we kept the velocities day, and what you saw was not only do we have evidence of peak performance being on the field by our throws being up, you saw the evidence as far as the bar speeds being up as well when we're using those bar speed devices. People I've often asked, and I'm not a math wizard, and I can't come up with it right now, but if you take a typical way, let's say the bump method, where you lift squat heavy one day and squat medium another day on the second day, right? That's more a traditional way of doing it, squatting heavy and squatting medium on a Thursday, let's say. And you take that, you go, okay, well, 4x5 at 85% on Monday, and then 4x5 at 75% on Thursday. You add all that up. But if you take 3x5, which we do normally for the Dr. B system, we'll do 3x5 at 65 to 70% every day, 2 days on, 1 day off. The total tonnage and volume for that week is way bigger than squatting heavy once and squatting medium once. And furthermore, when you train at 65 to 70%, it doesn't destroy the nervous system. Like if I went out and squatted at 85% as hard as I could on Monday, it's going to be hard to come out on Tuesday and train. Because with being technically good, 70% you can pretty technically good every day.
Talk a little bit about double days. Is it simply just trying to get more sessions in for development?
Something like that. Basically, the more developmental cycles you can fit in a year, the more development you're going to have. So if you can do double days, you're going to finish a lot faster as far as each session or as far as each cycle goes. So and you can manipulate it that way. Our training methods are usually 2 days on, 1 day off, or 3 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off. But when meet time comes, preparation comes, we can manipulate and go, okay, we're going to go 1 day on, 1 day off here because we got a meet coming up, or 3 days on, 1 day off here. You manipulate it that way, and you can get sessions done faster that way as well. We're going to go a double day here and maybe not a double day here. Also, the other way of doing double days is there's something, and I don't want to get too complicated here, but there's 2 programs you can use. So if you want to develop something in the first program and develop something different in the second program, you'll have 2 programs, and you'll have program 1 in the morning, program 2 in the evening. And then at that point, it'll take about the same amount of time. Like for me, it would still take 22 sessions because I'm doing double days. But if I did program 1 on day 1 and program 2 on day 2, it would take me probably double the amount of sessions to adapt because I'm adding that much more exercise into the mix.
How do you determine how many sessions in a cycle to peak? How do you know exactly where that's at when you're programming?
Well, that's the thing is when you have these charts and it's showing you like you have peaks and valleys and whatnot, there's a distinct peak when you look at the results of training. And when you have that distinct peak, you know that you're at peak performance. And then you see that when you have roughly 4 bad sessions in a row at the very end of your peak, you know that this is probably I'm done with it. Now, the first part, the first developmental cycle, you always go extra long. So there's a chance of getting burnt out during that developmental cycle. But you go right, and that's how you figure out where your peak is at. So now for me, I'll never hit burnout because I know that at 22 I'm done. So I'm finished no matter what. I'm stopping at 22, and we're moving on to something new. And that's a way of preventing the burnout.
Can the Bondarchuk system be used with a sport outside of track and field? Let's say like golf or something along those lines.
Well, if you look at the concept of the training, you have your 1 Olympic lift, your 1 lower body lift, and then you have the 4 general prep lifts that work all 3 planes. And I think if you look overall, at least in my systems, that every sport I work with, the goal is to work in all 3 planes and be balanced throughout the body. So if you look at that kind of a system, it's very balanced throughout the body, and the objective is to work all 3 planes of movement all the time. Now, specifically, how I try to apply it, I've tried to apply it to golf a little bit because I've worked with a golf coach a little bit, and basically you can say, okay, you can't have one program like throwing with golf, but what you could have is you could have in the morning, because they train twice a day. In the morning, you could have a long drive session. In the evening, you could have a chipping session and a putting session all in one, and then the next day you play. And you can go on that sequence every day and have the same lifts and still have a peak performance or adaptation to that. Exactly. And your putting would be your competitive exercise too. So if you have program 1 and program 2, you have program 1 in the morning, long drives. Program 2, putts.
Nick, we end the show with some resources here. What's the best piece of coaching advice you ever received?
I think what we just talked about, Derek Evely taught me to train, no matter what, you want to train everything in all three planes of movement. So whenever we do plyometrics, whenever we throw med balls, whenever we lift, whatever we do, we try and train in the frontal plane, the sagittal plane, and the transverse. I say transverse, sagittal, and frontal plane. Yes, sir. And to be open-minded about what you're learning and what you're doing.
Give us a book, app, and website recommendation.
A book, app, website. Franz Bosch's book just came out. Let me get the exact title for you. Are you familiar with that book? It's Strength Training and Coordination, an Integrative Approach. Kind of makes you really look at the way you program things. And then an app, like we just talked about, the Bridge app or the Train Heroic app, very, very good apps that have made my life and my world a lot easier by being able to be able to program that stuff on my laptop rather than having to hand out Excel spreadsheets every day. And for a website, I'd have to say, Hammer Media. If you want to learn more about Dr. Bondarchuk's system and more about what the types of stuff he does and whatnot, Dr. Bondarchuk's stuff is all over, and all his books are all over hammermedia.com, and that's HMMRMEDIA.com, and there's a huge amount of training resources, especially for track and field on there. But it's not just track and field, it's all sports. What's
the best way to stay up with what you have going on?
It's just go to hammermedia.com, HMMRMEDIA. It's not just about track and field. We've had a bunch of different people on there, ranging from, we've had Vern on there, Gambetta. We've had Steve Magnus, who's a distance coach, a bunch of different strength and conditioning experts. So it covers a whole range of topics. This morning we just did one on recruiting athletes, how to get athletes out for your sport, whether it's at the higher levels or at the high school level.
Truly appreciate you coming on the show, man. It's obvious that you are an expert. You're doing fantastic things at Notre Dame High School. The results speak for themselves. And just really appreciate you coming on and sharing with everybody and taking time out of your day, man. Thanks so much.
Hey, you know what? It's my honor. And one last thing is we talked about Bert a little bit, Bert Soren, and he just put in our brand new facility here at Notre Dame. And we were actually the first 9 years ago, when they first came out with the base camp racks. We were putting in a new facility then. And he goes, we got something new, something no one's ever seen before. You want to go with it? He goes, I don't have pictures of it for you either, but it's cool. I said, Bert, I trust you. We'll go with it. So we were the first ever ones that had the base camp racks, and now our facility out here I'm looking out at right now, it's the talk of the town. It's the really big deal. And if I give a plug for Bert, the fact is like, if you want it done right, they'll get it done right. If something goes wrong, they'll get it fixed no matter what. And their customer service is second to none, and they're not the typical business-like guys. They're your buddies too. So which makes it really cool.
Couldn't agree more, man. I appreciate you saying that, and thanks to Sornex for all they do. And if you are on your way to Summer Strong, man, make sure you say hello. And if you're not, I don't know what you're thinking, man. Get there, enjoy this experience. It's a phenomenal event, and the guys at Sornex are top shelf and every way. So, Nick, thanks again, man.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk. Thanks to this week's guest as well as our sponsors for bringing this episode to you for free. Make sure to check out ronmckeefery.com where you can join our mailing list, find the show notes, including all the links and resources mentioned, and information about Coach McKeefery's other products. While you are there, please join Coach McKeefery in the comments section thanking our guest for sharing. If you haven't subscribed to Iron Game Chalk Talk on YouTube or iTunes yet, make sure to do so. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome. Coach McKeefery can be found on Twitter at @RMcKeefery, on Facebook and YouTube at /Ron.McKeefery. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk.